Morning. Looks like you're doing a thorough job there.
Oh yeah, trying to keep our showroom ready. Takes some work.
I can see that. All right, you have a good one.
Hashtag racist cop accuses black man of trespassing in his own driveway. Unaware he's HOA chair. $1.4 million payout. Officer Brett Callen. Badge number 3312 of the Pinewood Township Police Department. Was on patrol through the Elmwood Estates subdivision on a Saturday morning when he spotted Raymond Okafor, a black man in his mid-40s, standing in a driveway at 14 Sycamore Ridge Lane washing a silver Audi Q7 with a bucket, a sponge, and the specific unhurried patience of someone spending a pleasant weekend morning doing a task they have done dozens of times before. Callen pulled his patrol car to the curb, stepped out, walked up the driveway, told Okafor that he had received a call about a suspicious individual in this area, and that he needed to know what Okafor was doing at this property. When Okafor told him he was washing his car in his driveway because it was his car and his driveway at his house, Callen told him that the house at 14 Sycamore Ridge Lane was listed in the neighborhood watch system as occupied by a family named Hendricks and that Okafor needed to explain the discrepancy. When Okafor told him that the Hendricks family had sold that house 14 months ago, and that he and his family had purchased it and had been living there since, Callen told him that he had no way to verify that on the spot and that Okafor needed to step away from the vehicle and the property while verification was conducted. When Okafor told him he would not step away from his own property and asked Callen to call the Pinewood Township Property Records Office to confirm ownership in under 3 minutes, Callen told him the Property Records Office was not open on Saturdays. When Okafor told him it had a 24-hour automated lookup line, whose number was printed on the township website, and that he was welcome to use it, Callen told him that he was being uncooperative and that his attitude was becoming the issue. He then told Okafor to put his hands where Callen could see them and to step to the rear of the vehicle because this was now a trespassing investigation. What Callen didn't know was that Raymond Okafor had lived at 14 Sycamore Ridge Lane for 14 months, that his name was on the deed, on the mortgage, on the utility accounts, on the township voter registration roll, and on the official letterhead of the Elmwood Estates Homeowners Association, of which Okafor was not simply a member but the elected chair, the person responsible for coordinating with the Pinewood Township Police Department on the Neighborhood Watch program that Callen had just cited as his justification for the stop. He also didn't know that the neighbor who had called the watch line to report a suspicious individual in the Sycamore Ridge driveway was a woman named Deborah Marsh who had moved into the subdivision 8 months after the Okafor family and who had never once in those 8 months introduced herself to the family 2 doors down, and that the suspicious individual she had described to the watch line was a black man washing a car in a residential driveway on a Saturday morning, which was the complete and unabridged text of the concern. And he didn't know that Okafor's 14-year-old son, Marcus, was watching the entire encounter from the front window of the house at 14 Sycamore Ridge Lane with his phone pressed against the glass, recording every second of his father being told to step away from his own car in his own driveway on a Saturday morning. Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments right now. We love seeing where our community is watching from. If you believe washing your own car in your own driveway on a Saturday morning should never produce a trespassing investigation, then like this video and subscribe. Because what Officer Brett Callen started on Sycamore Ridge Lane ended with a $1.4 million payout, a neighborhood watch system overhaul, and a letter from the HOA chair, the man standing in the driveway, formally requesting the officer's reassignment from the subdivision he had been charged with protecting. Raymond Okafor had purchased the house at 14 Sycamore Ridge Lane 14 months earlier after 17 years as a civil engineer and 12 years of careful financial planning that had produced, among other things, the down payment on a 4-bedroom house in a subdivision whose school district was the reason he and his wife Angela had identified it in the first place. Their daughter Amara was 11 and their son Marcus was 14, and both of them had opinions about their schools that Raymond and Angela took seriously as the primary data source for one of the largest financial decisions of their lives. He had been elected chair of the Elmwood Estates HOA 7 months after moving in, having attended the quarterly meeting in his 3rd month, identified 3 operational improvements to the association's vendor management process, proposed them with supporting documentation, and been asked by the outgoing chair to consider running for the position that was coming open at the annual election. He had run. He had been elected by a 12-3 margin. He had been coordinating with the Pinewood Township Police Department on the Neighborhood Watch program for 5 of the 7 months he had held the position. His contact at the department was a community liaison officer whose direct number was in his phone under the label Township PD Liaison. He had met that officer in person twice. On this Saturday morning, he had come outside at 9:15 with a bucket, a sponge, and a chamois cloth because the Audi had been sitting in the driveway for 2 weeks without a wash and the film of road dust on the hood was bothering him in the specific way that small maintenance tasks bother people who are precise about the things they can control. He was wearing a weekend clothes, cargo shorts, an old college t-shirt, sandals. He had his phone in his left shorts pocket. He had been washing the car for 11 minutes when Callan pulled up. Officer Brett Callan had been with the Pinewood Township Police Department for 6 years. His personnel file contained 13 complaints, 9 from black residents of the township's residential patrol zones, unlawful stop allegations, trespassing investigation complaints filed by black homeowners who had been asked to verify their residence at properties they owned, and 1 complaint from a black family who had been asked to produce identification before being allowed to re-enter their own home after returning from vacation. All 13 complaints had been reviewed and closed. The reviewing sergeant had noted in 4 separate closure memos that residential patrol in established subdivisions required officers to respond to all neighborhood watch calls without prejudging their validity and that the officer's conduct in each case had been consistent with that operational requirement. Nobody had examined what percentage of neighborhood watch calls in Elmwood Estates involved black residents. Nobody had been required to. When Callan received the watch line call, suspicious individual, Sycamore Ridge Lane, black male, washing a car, he had processed it through the same filter that had produced 13 complaints in 6 years. He had driven to Sycamore Ridge Lane with the specific confidence of someone whose prior stops had never produced a consequence that required recalibration. He had pulled up to number 14 and seen Okafor at the Audi and walked up the driveway and asked his question. Okafor told him it was his house. Callan told him the watch system showed it as Hendricks. Okafor told him the Hendricks family had sold 14 months ago. Callan told him he needed to step away from the property. Okafor told him he would not step away from his own property and offered 3 verification methods in sequence: the property records automated line, the township voter registration database accessible online, and his own name on the HOA letterhead, which he offered to retrieve from inside the house in under 2 minutes. Callan told him going inside the house was not an option during a trespassing investigation. Okafor looked at him. He was 46 years old and had 17 years of civil engineering experience and 12 years of HOA participation and 7 months of chairing the association that coordinated with this officer's department. He was standing in his driveway beside his car in his cargo shorts and his college t-shirt on a Saturday morning, and a uniformed officer was telling him that entering his own house was not an option. He kept his voice at the same measured register he used in HOA meetings when a vendor was presenting numbers that did not add up. "I am going to ask you one question," Okafor said, "and I need you to answer it specifically." "I'm the one asking questions here," Callan said. "What is the specific behavior that constitutes the suspicious activity you were called about?" Callan said a resident had reported a suspicious individual in this driveway. "Doing what specifically?" Okafor asked. "Washing a vehicle." Okafor looked at the bucket, looked at the sponge in his hand, looked at Callan. "A man washing a car in a residential driveway on a Saturday morning is the complete description of the suspicious activity," Okafor said. Callan said the caller had felt uncomfortable. "With a man washing a car," Okafor said. "Sir, I am the chair of the Elmwood Estates Homeowners Association," Okafor said. "I coordinate the Neighborhood Watch program with your department. My contact there is Officer Martinez. His number is in my phone. I am going to reach into my left pocket and call him. I need you to step back and give me room to do that." Callan told him he was not calling anyone until the trespassing investigation was concluded. Okafor looked at the front window of 14 Sycamore Ridge Lane. Marcus had moved slightly to the right so his phone was at a better angle. Okafor had not signaled him and was not going to. He looked back at Callan. "My son is filming this from inside that house," Okafor said. "Which is my house, which he lives in, which I own." He paused. "I want you to think carefully about what you do next." Callan told him again to step to the rear of the vehicle. Okafor did not move. He reached into his left shorts pocket with 2 fingers, produced his phone, and called Martinez. Martinez answered on the 3rd ring. Okafor identified himself, described his location, and described what was happening in the same 4-sentence summary he used in board meetings when a situation required a rapid briefing. Martinez asked to speak to Callan. Okafor held the phone out. Callan looked at it for 2 seconds. He took the phone. The conversation lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, Callan handed the phone back without speaking. He looked at Okafor. He looked at the bucket and the sponge. He looked at the house. He looked at the front window where Marcus was no longer attempting to be inconspicuous. "You're free to continue," Callan said. "I know," Okafor said. Callan walked back to his patrol car. He pulled away from the curb. Okafor watched him go. Then he looked at the front window, where Marcus had lowered his phone and was watching his father with the expression of a 14-year-old who has just watched something happen and is working out what it means. Okafor picked up his sponge. He finished washing the car. He did the windows and the wheels and the door handles and the mirrors. He was thorough about it because the dust film that had been bothering him for 2 weeks was still there, and he had come outside to address it, and he was going to address it. When he went inside, he sat with Marcus at the kitchen table and watched the footage on Marcus's phone. All of it. From the moment Callan's patrol car pulled to the curb to the moment it pulled away. 11 minutes and 43 seconds. He called his attorney at 10:50. He called the township's community relations office at 11:15. He drafted and sent a formal written complaint to the Pinewood Township Police Department, the State Law Enforcement Oversight Board, and the Township Council before noon, attaching Marcus's footage as a supporting document. Then he drafted a letter on HOA letterhead, his letterhead, as chair of the Elmwood Estates Homeowners Association, to the Pinewood Township Police Department's district commander formally, requesting a review of the Neighborhood Watch Protocol and the reassignment of Officer Brett Callan from the Elmwood Estates Patrol Zone pending that review. He sent it at 12:30. Attorney Clara Osei filed the federal civil rights lawsuit 31 days later. The complaint sought $1.4 million and named Callan personally, the Pinewood Township Police Department institutionally, and the township for systematic failure to address 13 complaints over 6 years. It cited the 9 prior complaints from black residents specifically, the 4 closure memos invoking the residential patrol operational requirement, and the specific failure of that requirement to cross-reference the demographic pattern of the watch calls it was being used to justify. It cited the 3 verification methods Okafor had offered and Callan had declined. It cited the property records automated line that was available 24 hours a day 7 days a week and that Callan had told Okafor was unavailable on Saturdays. The township's legal team reviewed Marcus's footage, the complaint history, the 3 declined verification offers, and the HOA letterhead letter. They calculated the cost of taking the case to trial. A jury watching a uniformed officer tell the chair of the Neighborhood Watch Coordination Program that he was trespassing on his own property, while declining 3 verification offers including a 24-hour automated line, and made their recommendation in 1 week. The recommendation was to settle. The township settled for the full $1.4 million 7 months after the complaint was filed. The settlement required an independent audit of all neighborhood watch calls received over the previous 5 years, sorted by race of the reported individual and the nature of the described activity. The audit found that black residents had been reported to the watch line at a rate 8.4 times higher than white residents for activities categorized as non-criminal in nature: walking, gardening, sitting in parked vehicles, and washing cars. It found that Callan had responded to 41 of those calls over 6 years, and that 34 of them had involved black residents engaged in non-criminal activities. It found that every one of the 13 complaints in his file corresponded to one of those 34 calls. Callan was terminated 4 months after the settlement. His certification was suspended by the State Oversight Board following a hearing at which the 13 complaints, the 4 closure memos, Marcus's footage, and the audit findings were all entered into the record. He was 34 years old at termination. He has not held a law enforcement position since. Deborah Marsh, the neighbor who had called the watch line, was not named in the lawsuit. She was, however, identified in the audit's supporting documentation as the source of the call that initiated the incident. That documentation was public record. She attended the following quarter's HOA meeting, the first one she had attended since moving into the subdivision, and sat in the back row. Raymond Okafor ran the meeting from the front table the way he ran every meeting, with an agenda, supporting documentation, and the specific organized patience of someone who had been doing this for 7 months and intended to keep doing it. He was re-elected HOA chair at the annual meeting 4 months after the settlement. Uncontested. The lesson fits in a driveway on Sycamore Ridge Lane on a Saturday morning. A man washed his car. He had a bucket, a sponge, a chamois, and 14 months of ownership documentation available in 3 different verification systems, 2 of which were accessible from the driveway in under 3 minutes. He offered all 3. Every offer was declined. The officer who declined them had 13 prior complaints, 9 from black residents, and foreclosure memos invoking an operational requirement that nobody had cross-referenced against the demographic pattern it was producing. $1.4 million. 1 certification suspended. 1 audit finding an 8.4 multiplier. 1 HOA letter on the chair's letterhead requesting reassignment. 1 14-year-old's phone footage from a front window. It should not require the elected chair of the Neighborhood Watch Coordination Program to invoke his own position to stop being investigated for trespassing on his own property. It keeps requiring it because the watch calls keep getting responded to and the closure memos keep invoking operational requirements and the demographic pattern keeps not being cross-referenced until the audit makes it unavoidable. If you believe washing your car should be the whole story and not the beginning of an 11-minute trespassing investigation, share this story with everyone who needs to understand what 8.4 times higher looks like when it is finally put in a document that someone is required to read. And if you believe $1.4 million is not the ceiling, subscribe. Because we are not finished until the audit that should H.